When Ryan Cole opened his door to a rain-soaked stranger that November night, he had no idea he was letting in the woman who would shatter his carefully rebuilt life, and then piece it back together in ways he never imagined. A single-father mechanic who'd learned to expect nothing. A wealthy art student running from everything she knew. One act of kindness that would cost them both more than they could afford, and give them everything they'd been too afraid to want. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The knock came at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday, cutting through the sound of rain hammering Ryan Cole's roof like gravel thrown against tin. He just finished reading Where the Wild Things Are to his daughter for the third night in a row, Emma's current favorite, the one she insisted on with the stubborn certainty only a 6-year-old could muster. She was finally asleep, her small hand curled around the stuffed elephant she'd named Mr. Bumbles, her breathing soft and even in the dim glow of her nightlight. Ryan had been heading toward the kitchen, thinking about the leftover pizza in the fridge and the transmission he needed to finish rebuilding tomorrow, when the knock stopped him mid-step. He wasn't expecting anyone. He never expected anyone. His life had narrowed to a predictable circuit: the repair shop, the grocery store, Emma's school, home, repeat. The kind of routine that kept you upright when everything else had tried to knock you down. He moved toward the front door, his sock feet silent on the worn hardwood, and peered through the peephole. The porch light illuminated a figure huddled against the rain, arms wrapped around themselves, dark hair plastered to their head. A girl. Young. Shivering. Ryan's first instinct was caution, the learned wariness of someone who'd been burned before, who'd rebuilt his life from ashes and couldn't afford another fire. But his second instinct, the one that lived deeper, was the same one that made him stop for broken-down cars on the highway, that made him fix Mrs. Henderson's lawnmower for free, that made him the kind of father who read the same story 3 nights running without complaint. He opened the door. The girl looked up, and Ryan saw fear flicker across her face before she tried to hide it behind something that might have been dignity if it hadn't been trembling so hard. She was maybe 20, 21, with dark eyes that held more weight than someone that young should carry. Her jacket, too thin for November in Portland, was soaked through, and she'd wrapped her arms around a backpack like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I'm so sorry to bother you. She stopped, her jaw clenching against the cold or the emotion or both. "My ride left me at the gas station about 2 miles back, and my phone's dead, and I don't—" Another pause, longer this time. "I saw your light." Ryan should have said no, should have offered to call her a taxi maybe, or given her directions to the nearest hotel, should have protected the quiet life he'd built, the safe space he'd created for Emma and himself. But he was looking at someone's daughter standing in the rain, and he was thinking about how the universe had a way of keeping score. And he was remembering the version of himself that used to believe in helping even when it wasn't convenient. "Come inside," he said, stepping back. "You're going to freeze." The relief that washed over her face was almost painful to see. "Thank you. God, thank you. I promise I'm not some kind of—" She was shaking so hard she could barely get the words out. "Just come in," Ryan said, gentler now. "We'll figure it out." She stepped across the threshold, dripping onto the small rug by the door, and Ryan got his first real look at her in the light. She was beautiful. That wasn't the right word, but it was the only one that came to mind in that moment. Not in the polished way of the women in the cologne ads Emma sometimes saw on TV before Ryan changed the channel. Beautiful in a raw, unfinished way. Like a painting before the final layer of varnish, when you could still see the brushstrokes and the honest intention beneath. "I'm Maya," she said, setting her backpack down carefully, like it might contain something breakable. "Maya Bennett, and I swear I'm not usually the kind of person who ends up stranded in the rain knocking on strangers' doors at—" She glanced at the clock on the wall. "Jesus, almost 10 o'clock. I'm so sorry." "Ryan Cole," he gestured toward the living room. "And you're not the first person to have a bad night. Sit down. I'll get you a towel." He moved to the linen closet in the hallway, listening to the soft sounds of her settling onto the couch, the creak of old springs that had held the weight of his family for longer than he liked to think about. This couch had been here when he'd brought his wife home from the hospital with newborn Emma, had been here through the fights that started quiet and ended with doors closing too hard. Had been here the night Sarah told him she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't do the small house and the modest life and the dreams that stayed dreams. Had been here through all the nights after, when he'd sat alone in the dark wondering how you were supposed to explain to a 3-year-old why mommy wasn't coming back. He grabbed a towel and one of his old sweatshirts, something warm and dry, and headed back to the living room. Maya was perched on the edge of the couch, trying not to drip on anything, her hands folded in her lap like a child called to the principal's office. "Here," Ryan said, handing her the towel and sweatshirt. "Bathroom's down the hall if you want to change, and I can throw your clothes in the dryer." She took them, her fingers brushing his briefly. Her hands were ice cold. "You don't have to do all this. You're already here," Ryan said simply. "Might as well be warm." Something shifted in her expression, a crack in whatever wall she'd been holding up. "Thank you," she said quietly, and this time it sounded like more than just words. It sounded like she meant it down to her bones. While Maya was in the bathroom, Ryan moved to the kitchen and started a pot of coffee. His hands worked on autopilot, measuring grounds, filling the reservoir, while his mind tried to catch up with the reality of having a stranger in his house. He should probably call someone, make sure she was who she said she was, that this wasn't some elaborate setup for what? Robbing a mechanic who barely had 2 nickels to rub together? Kidnapping a 6-year-old from a house with locks that barely worked? No. He was being paranoid. The girl was scared and cold and stranded, and he'd done the right thing. That's all this was. The bathroom door opened and Maya emerged in his old Portland State sweatshirt, the one from the 2 semesters he'd managed before Emma came along, and life demanded different priorities. It hung nearly to her knees, the sleeves rolled up 3 times, and she'd wrung most of the water from her hair. She looked younger like this. Vulnerable. "I can't believe I ended up here," she said, returning to the couch. "This whole night has been—" She stopped, shook her head. "I don't even know where to start." Ryan poured 2 cups of coffee and brought them to the living room, settling into the armchair across from her. "Start wherever makes sense. You said your ride left you?" Maya wrapped both hands around the mug like she was trying to absorb all its warmth at once. "I go to Pacific Northwest College of Art. I'm a junior, and I was supposed to meet some friends tonight. We were going to this gallery opening downtown, but the person who was driving got into a fight with her boyfriend, and we stopped at this gas station, and she told me to get out, just like that. Get out." She stared into the coffee. "And I did, because I'm an idiot who doesn't know how to stand up for herself, apparently. And then she just drove off." That's... Ryan searched for a word that wouldn't sound judgmental. "That's a hell of a thing for a friend to do." "Yeah, well," Maya's laugh was brittle. "I'm starting to realize I might not be great at picking friends, or reading people in general." She took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat. "My phone died before I could call anyone else, and I didn't have cash for a taxi, and I started walking because what else was I supposed to do? And then it started raining, and I was so cold I couldn't think straight, and I saw your house, and—" She met his eyes. "And you opened the door," which was either really kind or really stupid. I'm not sure which yet. "Probably both," Ryan admitted. "But I've got a daughter, 6 years old, asleep down the hall, and if she ever ends up cold and scared and stranded somewhere, I hope someone would let her inside." Something in Maya's expression softened. "You're a good dad." "I try to be." He set his coffee down. "Look, I can charge your phone if you want to call someone to pick you up, or I can give you money for a cab. Whatever you need." Maya hesitated, and Ryan watched her weigh something internally. "Could I maybe just stay tonight on your couch? I promise I'll be gone first thing in the morning, and I won't touch anything, and I just can't face going back to campus right now. Can't face explaining this to my roommate or dealing with the questions or—" She stopped. "I know how that sounds. Girl shows up soaking wet asking to spend the night with a stranger. But I swear I'm not crazy. I'm just tired, and I just need somewhere to not be on display for one night." Ryan should have said no. Every practical instinct he possessed was screaming at him to call that cab, send her on her way, maintain the boundaries that kept his small world safe. But he was looking at the exhaustion in her eyes, the defeat in the set of her shoulders, and he was thinking about all the nights he'd wanted someone to offer him shelter from the storms he couldn't name. "Yeah," he said. "You can stay. I'll get you a blanket and a pillow." "Thank you." She said it like a prayer. "Seriously, thank you." Ryan set her up on the couch with the extra bedding from the hall closet, showed her where the bathroom was again, told her to help herself to anything in the kitchen if she got hungry. Maya curled up under the blanket, still clutching the coffee mug, and watched him with those dark eyes that seemed to hold too many questions she didn't know how to ask. "Ryan?" she said as he was heading back to his bedroom. He turned. "Yeah?" "Why did you open the door, really?" He thought about it for a moment, trying to find words for something that lived more in instinct than reason. "Because someone needed help," he said finally, "and I remembered what it was like to need it." He left her there in the dim glow of the lamp he'd left on and went to check on Emma before heading to his own bed. His daughter was still sleeping soundly, Mr. Bumbles tucked under her chin, her face peaceful in a way that made Ryan's chest ache with the fierce protectiveness that had defined him since the moment she was born. He stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, and wondered what he'd just invited into their carefully constructed world. Ryan woke at 6:15 a.m. the next morning, the way he always did, his internal clock more reliable than any alarm. He lay there for a moment, listening to the sounds of his house settling, before he remembered the girl on his couch, the stranger he'd let spend the night, the beautiful, stranded art student who'd appeared out of the rain like something from a story he didn't know he was part of. He dressed quietly and padded down the hall, half expecting to find the living room empty, Maya gone like she'd never been there at all. But she was still asleep, curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek, the blanket pulled up to her shoulders. In sleep, she looked even younger, peaceful. Ryan moved to the kitchen and started breakfast, the same thing he made every morning: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, the routine that anchored him, that gave shape to the hours before they sprawled out into something unmanageable. He was flipping the eggs when Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, Mr. Bumbles dangling from one hand. "Morning, sweetheart," Ryan said, keeping his voice low. "You sleep okay?" Emma nodded, then froze, her gaze fixing on something behind him. Ryan turned to see Maya standing in the living room doorway, his sweatshirt rumpled from sleep, her hair a wild tangle around her face. She looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure whether she was allowed to be there in the daylight. "Hi," Maya said softly, offering a small wave to Emma. Emma stared at her with the unabashed curiosity of a 6-year-old who'd just discovered something unexpected in her familiar world. "Who are you?" "This is Maya," Ryan said, moving to crouch beside his daughter. "She needed a place to stay last night because she got stuck in the rain. Remember how we talked about helping people when they need it?" Emma nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. "Are you a princess?" Maya laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and genuine. "No, sweetheart, definitely not a princess. Just a regular person who got very lucky that your dad is so nice." "Oh." Emma considered this. "Do you like elephants?" Yes?" Maya glanced at Ryan, clearly unsure where this was going. "I think elephants are great." "This is Mr. Bumbles," Emma announced, holding up the stuffed elephant. "He's my best friend. Except sometimes Daddy is my best friend. Depends on the day." "Well, Mr. Bumbles is very handsome," Maya said, completely serious. "And he's lucky to have you as his person." Something in Ryan's chest loosened at the way Maya talked to Emma. Not the condescending baby talk some adults used, not the awkward over-enthusiasm of people who didn't really like kids, just honest and direct, treating his daughter like a small person worth taking seriously. "Are you having breakfast with us?" Emma asked. Maya looked at Ryan, a question in her eyes. He nodded. "If you want to. Nothing fancy, but there's enough." "I don't want to impose—" "You're already here," Ryan said, echoing his words from the night before. "Might as well eat." They sat around the small kitchen table, Ryan, Emma, and this stranger who'd somehow become less strange in the space of 12 hours. Emma chattered about her school, about her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who was nice except when you didn't clean up the art supplies, about the boy named Connor, who'd tried to trade her his chocolate milk for her apple slices at lunch yesterday. Maya listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Emma's dramatic retellings, and Ryan found himself watching the two of them instead of eating his own breakfast. This was dangerous. He could feel it, the way warmth crept into spaces that had been cold for so long, the way his house felt different with someone else in it, the way Emma's laughter sounded louder, brighter, more alive. This was how you got hurt. This was how you let yourself want things you couldn't have, believe in things that didn't last. After breakfast, while Emma played with her dolls in the living room, Maya helped Ryan clear the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Maya spoke. "I should probably go," she said quietly, rinsing a plate under the tap. "I've already taken up too much of your time." "You don't have to rush out," Ryan said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "I don't have to be at the shop until 9. Maya set the plate in the drying rack and turned to face him, leaning against the counter. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Where's Emma's mom?" Ryan had been expecting this question eventually. It always came up sooner or later when people realized he was doing this alone. He'd gotten good at the short version, the one that didn't invite follow-up questions or pity. "She left," he said simply, 3 years ago. "Decided this wasn't the life she wanted." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Ryan dried his hands on a dish towel. "We're okay. Better than okay, actually. Emma's happy. He paused, looking for the right word. "I'm managing." "You're doing more than managing," Maya said. "Emma's amazing, and she's like that because of you." Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, suddenly aware of how small his kitchen was, how close Maya was standing, how easy it would be to reach out and... No. He shut that thought down before it could finish forming. This girl was probably 10 years younger than him, from a completely different world, and she'd be gone in an hour anyway. Back to her college life, her art classes, her friends who abandoned people at gas stations. Back to a life that had nothing to do with single fathers and worn-out houses and transmission rebuilds. "I should give you my number," Maya said, pulling out her phone, now charged from the outlet near the couch. "In case you ever need art student services, bad paintings, questionable sculpture advice?" Ryan smiled despite himself. "Yeah, that comes up a lot in my line of work." But he took out his own phone and they exchanged numbers, and when Maya's fingers brushed his as she showed him where to type in the contact, Ryan felt that same jolt of something he'd felt the night before. Something he didn't have a name for yet. Something that felt like possibility. Maya gathered her things, pulled on her jacket, still slightly damp from the dryer, and knelt down to say goodbye to Emma. "It was really nice to meet you," she told his daughter. "And Mr. Bumbles." "Are you coming back?" Emma asked, with the blunt directness of children who haven't learned yet that some questions are better left unasked. Maya glanced at Ryan, and he saw the same uncertainty he felt reflected in her eyes. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I hope so." Ryan walked her to the door, and they stood there for a moment in the early morning light, Portland's perpetual drizzle misting the air beyond the porch. "Thank you," Maya said, "for everything, for not turning me away, for giving me somewhere to land, I guess." "You're welcome," Ryan said. "And Maya, if you ever need somewhere to land again, you've got my number." She smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached her eyes and made her face light up in a way that did complicated things to Ryan's carefully guarded heart. "I'll remember that." And then she was walking down his driveway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, disappearing into the gray morning like she'd been nothing but a dream. Ryan stood in the doorway watching her go, feeling the cold air seep into his house, and he knew with absolute certainty that something had shifted, that the careful balance he'd maintained, the safe distance he'd kept from anything that might hurt him again, it was already compromised. He just didn't know yet how much it would cost him. The first text came 3 days later on Sunday afternoon while Ryan was under a '98 Camry trying to figure out why the damn thing kept stalling out. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he rolled out from under the car, his hands covered in grease, and checked the screen. "Hi. It's Maya. I know this is random, but I was wondering if you and Emma wanted to get coffee sometime." "My treat, obviously, since you saved my life and all." Ryan stared at the message for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was where he should say thanks, but no thanks. Keep the boundaries clear. maintain the distance that kept everyone safe. But he was thinking about Emma's question, "Are you coming back?" And the way his daughter had been humming more this week, drawing pictures of a girl with dark hair who she said was her new friend. "Coffee sounds good," he typed. "When were you thinking?" They made plans for the following Saturday at a cafe near Ryan's house, somewhere casual, somewhere that wouldn't feel like a date because this definitely wasn't a date. Maya was just being friendly, paying back a kindness. That's all this was. But when Saturday came and Ryan pulled up to the cafe with Emma bouncing excitedly in her booster seat, and he saw Maya waiting outside with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a smile that made his stomach flip in ways he'd forgotten were possible, he knew he was lying to himself. "Emma!" Maya crouched down to his daughter's level, offering her one of the hot chocolates. "I got this for you, with extra whipped cream, obviously, because that's the only way to drink hot chocolate." Emma took the cup reverently, her eyes wide. "Thank you." "And this is for you," Maya said, handing Ryan the second cup. "Black coffee with 1 sugar. I texted you yesterday asking how you take it, but you didn't answer, so I made an educated guess based on the grumpy mechanic demographic." Ryan laughed. "Grumpy mechanic demographic? Too harsh? I can go with ruggedly thoughtful instead." "That's worse." "Noted." Maya grinned at him, and Ryan felt that flip in his stomach again, stronger this time. They walked to a nearby park, Emma running ahead to the playground, while Ryan and Maya settled on a bench with sightlines to the swings. The afternoon was crisp and clear, one of those rare Portland November days when the rain took a break and the light turned everything golden. "So," Maya said, watching Emma climb the jungle gym with the fearlessness of the very young. "How have you been?" "Good," Ryan said. "Same as always. Work, Emma, sleep, repeat. You?" "I've been thinking about your house," Maya said, and something in her tone made Ryan turn to look at her. Not in a creepy way, just, it felt different there, quiet in a good way, like the world couldn't reach you. "That's kind of the point," Ryan admitted. "After Emma's mom left, I needed somewhere that felt contained, I guess. Manageable." Maya nodded, staring at her coffee. "My life is the opposite of contained right now. My parents keep calling, asking when I'm going to switch to a practical major. My roommate thinks I'm wasting my time with art. And my friends—" She stopped. "The girl who left me at that gas station, she texted me the next day like nothing happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, just, 'Hey, want to get brunch?'" "What did you say?" I didn't answer. Maya looked at him. "I think I'm starting to realize I've been surrounding myself with people who don't actually see me. They see the version of me that's convenient, the one who doesn't make waves or ask for too much or expect people to follow through." Ryan understood that more than he wanted to admit. Sometimes it's easier to be invisible than to risk being seen and rejected. "Yeah." Maya's voice was quiet. "Yeah, exactly." Emma came running over, breathless and pink-cheeked. "Daddy, can Maya push me on the swings? Please." "If she wants to," Ryan said, glancing at Maya. "I would love to push you on the swings," Maya said, standing up. "But I'm warning you now, I'm going to make airplane noises the whole time." "Yay!" Emma grabbed Maya's hand and dragged her toward the swing set, and Ryan watched them go with something that felt dangerously close to contentment settling in his chest. They stayed at the park for almost 2 hours. Maya pushed Emma on the swings, helped her navigate the climbing wall, sat in the sandbox making elaborate castles while Ryan watched from the bench. And when Emma asked if Maya could come over for dinner, Ryan found himself saying yes before he could think better of it. Dinner was spaghetti, the one thing Ryan could make reliably without burning. And Maya set the table while Emma told her elaborate stories about her stuffed animals' various adventures. They ate like a family, comfortable and easy, and Ryan kept waiting for the moment when reality would intrude, when he'd remember all the reasons this couldn't work. But that moment never came. After dinner, Maya helped give Emma her bath. Another boundary crossed, another piece of normal domestic life that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. She read Emma bedtime stories in different voices, making his daughter giggle until she had hiccups, and when Emma finally fell asleep, Maya and Ryan stood in the doorway together watching her breathe. "She's incredible," Maya whispered. "You've done such a good job with her." "Thanks," Ryan said, his voice rough. "She's pretty much my whole world." They moved to the living room, settling at opposite ends of the couch, with careful space between them. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of rain starting up again outside. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said after a while. "Seems to be the theme tonight." She smiled, but it faded quickly. "Are you lonely?" The question hit harder than Ryan expected. No one had asked him that before, not directly, not with that much genuine curiosity and care. "Yeah," he said finally. "Most days, yeah." "Me too," Maya said quietly. "Even surrounded by people all the time. Maybe especially then." They sat in that shared admission for a moment, the weight of it settling between them like something solid and real. Ryan knew he should say something to lighten the mood, to step back from whatever edge they were approaching. But he was tired of stepping back, tired of protecting himself from connection. "You can come back," he said instead. "Anytime you want. Emma would love it, and I—" He stopped, made himself say it. "I would too." Maya turned to look at him, and in her eyes, Ryan saw the same fear and hope and desperate wanting that he felt. "Yeah? Yeah?" She moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Ryan could feel the warmth of her, could smell whatever soap or shampoo she used. "What are we doing?" she asked softly. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, "but I don't want to stop." They didn't kiss. Didn't cross that line, not yet. But they sat there on the couch until almost midnight, talking about everything and nothing. Maya's art, Ryan's work, the small moments that make up a life, the big questions that never get answered. And when Maya finally left, stepping out into the rain with a promise to come back next weekend, Ryan stood in the doorway and watched her go with the knowledge that his carefully contained world was cracking open. And for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't afraid of what might get in. Maya started coming over every weekend after that. She'd show up Saturday morning with art supplies for Emma, or coffee for Ryan, or sometimes just herself, showing up being enough. She became part of their rhythm, woven into the fabric of their modest life in ways that felt both sudden and inevitable. She brought color to the house, literally and figuratively. Art projects covered the kitchen table. Emma's drawings multiplied across the refrigerator. Maya taught his daughter about primary colors and negative space and how to see the world like an artist, all the shapes and shadows and light that most people missed. But it was the small things that undid Ryan. The way Maya remembered how he took his coffee. The way she'd help with dishes without being asked. The way she'd sprawl on the living room floor with Emma, completely unself-conscious, laughing like she'd never been told she was supposed to be dignified. The way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, with something that made his breath catch and his carefully maintained walls tremble. They were careful, though. Always careful. They didn't touch more than was necessary, didn't let their conversations drift too far into dangerous territory, maintained the fiction that this was just friendship, just kindness, just two lonely people finding comfort in each other's company. The fiction lasted almost a month before it shattered completely. It was a Friday night, not their usual routine, but Maya had texted saying she'd had a horrible day and could she please just come hide in his living room for a while. Ryan said yes, because he always said yes to her now. And when she showed up an hour later, her eyes were red and her hands were shaking. "What happened?" Ryan asked, pulling her inside, his protective instincts firing on all cylinders. "I got into a fight with my father," Maya said, her voice unsteady. "He called to tell me he's pulling his tuition support unless I switch to business school. Said art is a hobby, not a career, and he's not paying for me to waste my life on hobbies." Maya, and the worst part? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The worst part is I almost agreed. Almost said, okay, I'll be who you want me to be. I'll live the life you've decided is appropriate. Because that's what I always do. I fold, I accommodate. I make myself smaller so other people can be comfortable." Ryan didn't think. He just reached for her, pulled her into his arms, and let her cry against his chest. She clutched his shirt like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing left in the world, and Ryan held her and thought about all the ways people could break you by loving you wrong. "You're not wasting your life," he said fiercely. "You're not a hobby. And anyone who can't see how much light you bring to everything you touch is blind." Maya pulled back just enough to look up at him, tears still streaming down her face. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" Make me feel like I matter, like I'm not just. She stopped, searching for words. Like I'm enough exactly as I am. Because you are, Ryan said. You are enough, Maya. More than enough. And then somehow, Ryan was never quite sure who moved first. They were kissing. Soft at first, tentative, like they were both waiting for the other person to pull away. But neither of them did. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and honest, and 3 months overdue. Maya's hands tangled in Ryan's hair, and he pulled her closer, closer, trying to close a distance that had nothing to do with physical space. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryan's first thought was Emma's asleep down the hall, followed immediately by this changes, everything followed by I don't care. We shouldn't, Maya started, but Ryan cut her off with another kiss, softer this time. Probably not, he agreed when they separated again, but I'm tired of shouldn't. They moved to the couch, tangled together in ways that felt both new and familiar, and they kissed until Ryan's jaw ached and Maya's lips were swollen and the rain outside had turned from drizzle to downpour. They didn't go further than that, not with Emma in the house, not yet, but what they had was enough. More than enough. I should go, Maya whispered eventually, though she made no move to leave his arms. You should stay, Ryan countered, and meant it in ways that had nothing to do with tonight. Ryan, I know. He pressed his forehead to hers. I know this is complicated. I know you're younger than me and in a completely different place in your life. I know I come with a kid and a mortgage and more baggage than anyone should have to deal with. But Maya, he made himself say it, I'm falling for you. Have been since the night you knocked on my door. And I need you to know that before we go any further. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing absent patterns on his shoulder. My whole life, she said finally, people have told me who I should be. My parents want me to be successful and practical. My friends want me to be fun and uncomplicated. My professors want me to be talented and dedicated. And I've spent so much energy trying to be all those things that I forgot to figure out who I actually am. She looked up at him. But when I'm here, with you and Emma, I don't feel like I have to be anything except myself. And that's terrifying because I'm not sure I know who that is yet, but it's also the only place I want to be. So stay, Ryan said again. It's not that simple. My parents, if they knew about you, about us, they'd lose their minds. Single father mechanic who's in his 30s? That's not exactly what they had planned for me. And what about what you have planned for you? Maya smiled, sad and honest. I'm working on that apart. She left shortly after, promising to text when she got home, and Ryan lay awake most of the night thinking about the way she'd felt in his arms, the way she'd kissed him like he was air and she'd been drowning, the way his whole life had rearranged itself around this girl who'd shown up shivering on his doorstep 12 weeks ago. He was in trouble. Deep, complicated, probably going to end badly trouble. But when his phone buzzed at 1:43 a.m. with a text that just said, I'm falling too, Ryan smiled in the darkness and thought that maybe trouble was worth it. The next few weeks existed in a strange, suspended reality. Maya came over more often, sometimes on weekends, sometimes stealing away for a few hours on weekday evenings, always fitting herself into the spaces of Ryan's life with an ease that should have been impossible, but somehow wasn't. They were careful around Emma, never more than friendly in front of her, but the current between them was impossible to ignore. Every accidental touch lingered. Every shared look carried weight. They were two people trying to pretend they weren't falling in love while actively tumbling head first. Maya met Emma's teacher at pickup one day when she happened to be visiting. Mrs. Rodriguez assumed she was Ryan's girlfriend, and he didn't correct her, just let Maya handle the assumption with grace and warmth, and that smile that made his chest tight. She came to Emma's school winter performance and cheered louder than anyone else when his daughter remembered all the words to Jingle Bells. She helped Ryan fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom, holding the flashlight while he worked, and they ended up kissing in the hallway after, wet and laughing and covered in rust. She was becoming essential. That was the dangerous part. Ryan had built his life to be self-sufficient, to need nothing he couldn't provide for himself and Emma. But Maya was threading herself through their days in ways that were becoming structural, load-bearing. He didn't know how they'd hold themselves up if she left. He tried not to think about that, tried to just live in the moment, take what joy he could from the time they had. But in the quiet moments, late at night when Emma was asleep and the house was still, doubt crept in. Maya was young and brilliant with her whole life stretching out ahead of her. What was she doing playing house with a mechanic who could barely afford to take her to dinner? How long until she realized she could do better, be with someone who matched her potential instead of someone who'd already peaked at 33? He never said any of this out loud, but Maya must have sensed something because she started bringing it up in sideways ways. Asking about his dreams, what he wanted from life beyond survival, telling him about her classes, her professors, her complicated relationship with her art and her future, testing maybe to see if they could bridge the gap between their worlds. "What would you do?" she asked one Saturday afternoon while Emma napped, "if money wasn't an issue?" They were on the couch again, their spot now, the place where most of their important conversations happened. Ryan was holding her loosely, one arm around her shoulders, trying not to think too hard about how natural this felt. "Honestly," Ryan considered it, "I'd probably still be a mechanic. I like fixing things, like taking something broken and making it work again. There's something satisfying about that. But maybe I'd have my own shop, not working for someone else. Build something that was mine, that I could leave to Emma someday." Maya tilted her head back to look at him. "Why haven't you?" "Because dreams require capital and time and risk, and I have a 6-year-old who needs stability more than I need to chase maybes." "That's very responsible," Maya said. But I wonder if you've convinced yourself you don't deserve more than just getting by. If you've made peace with small, not because it's what you want, but because it's what feels safe." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Maybe because she was right. Maybe because he'd stopped dreaming the day Sarah walked out, decided that wanting more was what got you hurt. "What about you?" he asked instead. "What do you want?" Maya was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm. "I want to make art that matters," she said finally. "Not for my parents or my professors or anyone else. I want to create something honest and real that says—" She stopped, searching. "That says, here's what it feels like to be alive. Here's what it feels like to be broken and scared and still keep showing up. I want to make beauty out of the hard parts." "You will," Ryan said with absolute certainty. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because you already are." She kissed him then, slow and deep, and Ryan thought about the different kinds of art, the paintings and sculptures and photographs, yes, but also the way people could rebuild themselves, the way kindness could transform strangers into family, the way love could happen when you weren't even looking for it. They were in the middle of that kiss when Emma's voice came from the hallway. "Daddy? Maya, I'm hungry." They broke apart, laughing, and Ryan went to make his daughter a snack while Maya stayed on the couch. When he came back, Emma was curled up next to Maya, showing her a book about dinosaurs, and Maya was listening with complete focus, asking questions about velociraptors and triceratops like this was the most important conversation she'd ever have. Ryan stood in the doorway watching them, and he felt his heart crack open with the terrible knowledge that he'd already lost the ability to protect himself from this. He loved them both, his daughter and this girl who'd walked into their lives by accident, and there was no taking that back now. Whatever came next, whatever price he'd have to pay for these borrowed moments, it was already too late to save himself. He was all in, whether he wanted to be or not. The shift happened gradually, then all at once, the way most transformations do. December arrived with its cold bite and early darkness, and Maya's presence in Ryan's house became less like visiting and more like coming home. She had a toothbrush in the bathroom now, a drawer with spare clothes, a favorite mug that Emma had picked out for her at the thrift store. Bright yellow with a chipped handle that Maya refused to let Ryan replace. "It's perfect because it's imperfect," she'd said, cradling it like something precious. "That's the whole point." Ryan was learning that Maya saw the world differently than most people. Where others saw broken, she saw character. Where others saw worn out, she saw lived in. She'd walk through his house touching things with reverent fingers, the water stain on the ceiling from the leak he'd fixed 2 winters ago, the scratches on the floor from when Emma had dragged her tricycle through the hallway, the faded paint around the light switches worn smooth by thousands of hands reaching in the dark. "Your house tells stories," Maya had said one evening, running her palm along the kitchen door frame where Ryan had marked Emma's height every birthday. "Most places are just empty boxes people fill with stuff, but this place, it remembers things." She'd started bringing her art supplies over, setting up in the corner of the living room where the afternoon light came through the window just right. Emma would sit beside her, working on her own drawings, and Ryan would pretend to read the paper while actually watching them. The way Maya's face went soft and focused when she painted, the way she'd pause to help Emma mix colors or show her how to hold the brush, the way she'd glance up sometimes and catch him staring and smile like she knew exactly what he was thinking. They still hadn't told Emma what was happening between them. Ryan wasn't sure how to explain something he barely understood himself. What were they? Boyfriend and girlfriend felt juvenile. Dating felt too casual for the way Maya had woven herself into every corner of his life. Partners felt presumptuous for a relationship that was still so new, still so fragile. But Emma was 6, not stupid. She'd started calling Maya at bedtime when Maya wasn't there, insisting that Ryan put her on speaker so she could say goodnight. She'd draw pictures of the three of them, stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, and tape them to the refrigerator with the unselfconscious certainty of a child who didn't yet know that families came in wrong shapes. And one morning, while Ryan was making breakfast, Emma had looked up from her cereal and asked, "Is Maya going to live here forever?" Ryan had frozen, spatula in hand, trying to find an answer that was honest without being painful. "Would you want that?" "Duh, Daddy." Emma had rolled her eyes with the exasperation only a first grader could muster. "She's the best, and you smile more when she's here. You didn't used to smile that much." Out of the mouths of babes, Ryan had changed the subject, but the question had lodged itself in his chest like a splinter. Would Maya live here forever? Could she? Did she even want to? They'd been careful not to talk about the future, both of them dancing around the elephant in the room, the fact that Maya's world and Ryan's world existed in different orbits, connected only by the temporary gravity of her college years. She'd graduate eventually, move on to whatever came next. And Ryan would still be here, in this worn-down house, fixing transmissions and raising his daughter and remembering what it felt like to believe in possibilities. But then came the afternoon that changed everything. Ryan was at the shop, 3 knuckles deep in an oil change, when his phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen, and he almost didn't answer. His hands were covered in grease, and he was behind schedule. But something made him wipe his fingers on his coveralls and pick up. "Hey," he said. "Everything okay? Can I come over?" Maya's voice was tight, controlled in a way that meant she was barely holding it together. "I know it's Thursday, and we usually wait until the weekend, but I just need to see you. Of course, I'll be home by 6. Do you need me to come sooner?" "No, 6 is fine. She stopped, and Ryan heard her take a shaky breath. "Thank you." She hung up before he could ask what was wrong, and Ryan spent the next 3 hours working on autopilot, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Was she hurt? Sick? Had something happened at school? He picked Emma up from after-school care at 5:30, drove home with his daughter chattering about her day while his thoughts spiraled, and pulled into the driveway to find Maya's beat-up Honda already parked on the street. She was sitting on his porch steps, her arms wrapped around her knees, and even from the car, Ryan could see the defeated slope of her shoulders. "Maya!" Emma bolted from the car before Ryan had fully put it in park, throwing herself at Maya with the uncomplicated affection of childhood. "You're here! Are you staying for dinner? Can we make cookies?" Maya caught Emma, held her tight, and when she looked up at Ryan over his daughter's head, her eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. "Hey, sweetheart," she said to Emma, her voice only slightly rough. "Cookies sound perfect. But first, can you go inside and draw me a picture of Mr. Bumbles? I want to hang it in my dorm room, but it has to be really special." Emma, easily redirected by the promise of an important artistic mission, nodded seriously and ran inside. Maya stood slowly, and Ryan closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms without a word. She collapsed against him, her fingers clutching his shirt, and he could feel the tremors running through her. "What happened?" he asked quietly, his lips against her hair. My parents found out about you. Ryan's stomach dropped. How? My roommate told them. Maya's laugh was bitter. Apparently she's been concerned about my choices lately. Thought they should know I was spending all my time with a single father instead of focusing on my studies. Very thoughtful of her. Maya, they want to meet you. She pulled back enough to look at him, and Ryan saw fear in her eyes, raw and honest. Tomorrow. They're driving up from Eugene, and they want to have dinner with us. All of us. You, me, Emma. They said, her voice cracked, they said they want to see what I've been choosing over my future. Ryan felt anger spike hot in his chest. Not at Maya, never at Maya, but at the people who'd raised her to believe that love was something you had to choose over everything else. That happiness came with prerequisites. Okay, he said calmly, we'll have dinner with them. Ryan, you don't understand. My father, he's not going to be nice about this. He's going to look at your house and your job and your life, and he's going to... She stopped, her jaw clenching. He's going to try to make me feel ashamed, and the worst part is it might work. Then we won't let it work. Ryan cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. I'm not ashamed of my life. I'm not ashamed of my daughter or my house or the fact that I fix cars for a living. And if your parents can't see past that to who you are when you're here, to how happy you are, then that's their failure, not ours. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. What if I'm not strong enough to stand up to them? You are, Ryan said with absolute conviction. You walked away from a life that was killing you and knocked on a stranger's door in the rain. You already did the hard part. This is just telling them about it. She kissed him then, desperate and grateful, and Ryan poured everything he couldn't say into that kiss, all his fear and hope and fierce determination to protect this thing they'd built, this fragile, beautiful thing that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Emma's voice called from inside, I'm done with the picture. And they broke apart, both breathing hard. We can do this, Maya whispered, more to herself than to him. We can do this, Ryan agreed, and prayed he was right. Friday evening arrived with the inevitability of a storm you could see building on the horizon. Ryan cleaned the house top to bottom, not because he thought it would make a difference, but because he needed to do something with his hands, needed to feel like he had some control over what was about to happen. Maya showed up at 4 with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Ryan made in a day, her hands shaking as she set it on the counter. They'll be here at 6, she said, her voice thin. My mother texted that they made good time, because of course they did. Heaven forbid they be late to judge my life choices. Hey, Ryan caught her hand, pulled her close. Whatever happens, we're going to get through it. You, me, and Emma, that's what matters. What if they don't approve? Then they don't approve. It doesn't change anything. But even as he said it, Ryan knew he was lying. Of course it changed things. Maya was still financially dependent on her parents, still tied to them in ways that mattered. If they cut her off, if they made her choose between her family and this relationship, Ryan didn't know what she'd do, didn't know what he'd want her to do. Emma, blissfully unaware of the tension, was excited about having guests. She'd insisted on wearing her favorite dress, the purple one with the unicorns, and had arranged all her stuffed animals on the couch in what she called a fancy welcome party. She kept asking why Maya seemed sad, and Ryan kept deflecting, and by the time 6 o'clock rolled around, his nerves were stretched so tight he thought they might snap. The knock, when it came, sounded like a judge's gavel. Ryan opened the door to find 2 people who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for successful upper-middle-class living. Maya's father was tall and severe in a cashmere coat, his gray hair perfectly styled, his eyes cold and assessing as they swept over Ryan's face, his clothes, the house visible behind him. Maya's mother was elegant in that brittle way some women achieved. Expensive haircut, tasteful jewelry, smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, Ryan said, extending his hand. I'm Ryan Cole. Please, come in. Marcus Bennett's handshake was perfunctory, his grip just short of aggressive. Mr. Cole. He stepped inside, his gaze cataloging everything. The worn furniture, the crayon drawings on the walls, the toys scattered despite Ryan's best efforts to clean. "This is quite a place you have here." It wasn't a compliment. "Daddy, who are they?" Emma appeared in the hallway, Mr. Bumbles clutched to her chest, and Ryan saw something flicker across Catherine Bennett's face. Not warmth exactly, but a crack in the armor. "This is Maya's mom and dad," Ryan said, crouching to Emma's level. "Remember, the ones coming for dinner." "Oh." Emma's face lit up. She ran to Maya, who'd been standing frozen in the kitchen doorway, and grabbed her hand. "They're here to meet us." "Maya, you didn't tell me your mom was so pretty." Catherine Bennett blinked, clearly not expecting to be complimented by a 6-year-old. "Thank you, dear. What's your name?" "Emma Marie Cole. And this is Mr. Bumbles. He's an elephant, but he's also my best friend. Maya helped me make him a scarf last week. See?" She held up the stuffed animal proudly, displaying the tiny knitted scarf in bright green yarn. "That's lovely," Catherine said, and there was something almost genuine in her voice now. Dinner was excruciating. Ryan had made pot roast, one of the few dishes he could actually cook well, and Maya had brought a salad and the expensive wine. They sat around Ryan's small kitchen table, Emma chattering obliviously, while the adults navigated a conversation mined with unspoken judgments and careful politeness. Marcus asked about Ryan's work with the tone of someone asking about a particularly unpleasant medical condition. "So, you're a mechanic. Is that what you've always done?" "I went to college for a couple years," Ryan said evenly. "Engineering. But my daughter was born, and I needed steady income, so I took a job at the shop. Turns out, I'm good at it." "But you didn't finish your degree." "No, sir, I didn't." "And Emma's mother?" Marcus's eyes were sharp, assessing. "Maya mentioned she's not in the picture. She left 3 years ago." Ryan kept his voice neutral, aware of Emma listening even as she pushed peas around her plate. "It's just Emma and me now." "That must be difficult," Catherine said, and unlike her husband, she sounded almost sympathetic. "Raising a child alone while working full-time." "We manage," Ryan said. "Emma's happy. That's what matters." "Is it?" Marcus set down his fork with deliberate precision. "Because from where I'm sitting, Mr. Cole, it looks like you're just getting by, and now my daughter has gotten herself tangled up in your situation, playing house with someone else's child, wasting her time and talent on—" He gestured vaguely at the room. "On this." "Dad?" Maya's voice was quiet but sharp. "Don't." "Don't what? Tell the truth?" Marcus turned to his daughter. "Maya, you're 21 years old. You're supposed to be building a future, not babysitting for a man who's got more baggage than prospects." Ryan felt his jaw clench, but before he could respond, Emma spoke up, her voice small but clear. "Maya's not babysitting. She's our friend, and she loves us." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma looked around the table, confused by the sudden tension, and Maya reached over to take her hand. "That's right, sweetheart," Maya said softly. "I do love you." "Maya, we need to talk." Marcus stood abruptly. "Outside, now." Catherine touched her husband's arm. "Marcus, maybe we should— Now." Maya looked at Ryan, and he could see her wavering, the old pattern of accommodation and fear warring with the person she was trying to become. Ryan wanted to tell her to stay, to stand her ground, but he also knew this was her choice to make. Her fight. "Okay," Maya said quietly. She stood, squeezed Emma's hand once more, and followed her parents out to the porch, leaving Ryan and Emma alone in the kitchen. Emma looked up at him, her eyes wide and worried. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, baby." Ryan pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "You said exactly the right thing." Through the window, Ryan could see Maya and her parents on the porch. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see Marcus gesturing sharply, Maya's shoulders hunching, Catherine standing slightly apart with her arms crossed. The body language told him everything he needed to know. This was a fight Maya wasn't winning. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Emma had fallen asleep against Ryan's chest, exhausted by the emotion she didn't fully understand when the front door finally opened. But only Maya's parents came back inside. "Where's Maya?" Ryan asked, carefully standing with Emma in his arms. "In the car," Marcus said curtly. "We're leaving, and Maya won't be coming back." Ryan's blood went cold. What did you say to her? We explained reality, Marcus said, that she has 1 semester left before graduation and she needs to focus on her future, not play house with a mechanic who can barely provide for his own child. We're cutting off her access to her car and her credit cards, and she'll be moving back home after graduation to start a proper job at my firm. You can't. She's an adult. You can't force her. I can make her life very difficult if she chooses to defy me, Marcus interrupted. And I will. I'm not going to stand by and watch my daughter throw away her potential on some fantasy of domestic bliss with a man who has nothing to offer her. Catherine at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mr. Cole, please understand, we only want what's best for Maya. No, Ryan said, his voice low and dangerous. You want what's easiest for you, what looks good on your Christmas card. You don't care what makes her happy. Happiness, Marcus scoffed, is not the same as security. Maya will thank us for this someday. They left without another word, and Ryan stood in his doorway holding his sleeping daughter, watching the sleek black Mercedes pull away with Maya in the back seat. He caught one glimpse of her face through the window, stricken, devastated, looking back at him like someone being dragged underwater, before they turned the corner and disappeared. Ryan carried Emma to bed, tucked her in with Mr. Bumbles, and sat on the edge of her mattress for a long time just watching her sleep. His phone buzzed with a text, and his heart leapt until he saw it was from Maya's number, but not Maya's words. This is Marcus Bennett. Delete this number. If you contact my daughter again, I will pursue legal action for harassment. Stay away from her, or I will make your life and your daughter's life very difficult. Ryan stared at the message until his vision blurred. Then he threw his phone across the room and put his head in his hands and tried to remember how to breathe. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Ryan's life. He went through the motions, work, Emma, sleep, repeat, but everything felt muted, colorless, like the world had been drained of something essential. Emma kept asking where Maya was, why she didn't come over anymore, and Ryan kept lying. She's busy with school, she'll visit soon, don't worry. Until finally Emma stopped asking and just drew sad pictures of a girl with dark hair who was always walking away. Ryan tried to give Maya space, tried to respect whatever choice she'd made that night. But every time his phone rang, his heart jumped. Every time the door knocked, he hoped. And every night, he lay awake wondering if she was okay, if she was thinking about him, if she regretted what they'd almost had. He almost called her a dozen times, typed out messages he never sent, drove past her campus once and hated himself for it. He was a 33-year-old man pining like a teenager, and the worst part was he couldn't even be angry with her. She'd been backed into a corner by people who were supposed to love her, forced to choose between her heart and her survival. What was she supposed to do? But anger came anyway, hot and bitter and directed at himself, for letting himself believe this could work, for opening his heart when he knew better, for dragging Emma into it, letting her get attached to someone who was never going to stay. He'd failed his daughter again, let hope override common sense, and now they were both paying the price. December rolled into January. Portland's rain turned relentless, the kind of cold wet that soaked into your bones and stayed there. Ryan threw himself into work, taking extra shifts, staying late to avoid going home to the house that felt too empty now. His boss asked if he was okay, and Ryan lied. Mrs. Henderson asked where that nice young woman had gone, and Ryan changed the subject. Even Emma's teacher pulled him aside after pickup one day, concerned about his daughter's recent drawings, all those pictures of people walking away. Is everything all right at home? Mrs. Rodriguez asked gently. We're fine, Ryan said, forcing a smile. Just some changes. We'll be okay. But he wasn't sure he believed it. On a Tuesday evening in late January, Ryan was making dinner, mac and cheese from a box because he couldn't summon the energy for anything more complicated, when Emma came into the kitchen holding one of the pictures Maya had drawn for her, a watercolor of a garden, bright and alive with color. I miss her, Daddy, Emma said quietly, and the simple honesty of it broke something in Ryan that had been holding together through sheer stubbornness. He knelt down to his daughter's level, pulled her into a hug, and let himself admit the truth. I miss her too, baby. So much. Is she ever coming back? Ryan wanted to say yes, wanted to promise that love was enough, that everything would work out, that people didn't just walk away from things that mattered. But he'd learned the hard way that promises were just words until someone chose to keep them. "I don't know," he said instead, "but I know she loved us. That was real, even if it's over." Emma nodded against his shoulder, her small arms tight around his neck, and they stayed like that until the water boiled over on the stove and the smoke alarm started beeping. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan finally let himself look at the pictures on his phone. All the photos he'd taken over those few perfect months. Maya covered in finger paint, laughing. Maya and Emma making snow angels in the first snow of December. Maya asleep on his couch, her face peaceful in the lamplight. Maya looking at him with such open affection that it physically hurt to remember. He should delete them. Should let himself move on. Accept that this chapter had closed. But he couldn't make himself do it. Couldn't erase the evidence that she'd been here, that she'd mattered, that for a little while they'd been something close to a family. His phone buzzed with an email notification, and Ryan almost ignored it, probably spam or a reminder from Emma's school about some upcoming event. But something made him check. It was from Maya. No subject line, just 2 words in the body of the email. "I'm sorry." Ryan stared at those words until they blurred. Sorry for what? For leaving? For not fighting harder? For making him believe in something that couldn't last? He wanted to be angry, wanted to throw the phone again, wanted to feel anything except this hollowness that had taken up residence in his chest. Instead, he typed back, "Me too." He hit send before he could overthink it, then set the phone down and went to the garage. It was almost midnight, but sleep felt impossible. So he did what he always did when the world got too heavy. He lost himself in the work. There was an old Chevy truck in the corner that he'd been restoring in his spare time, piece by piece, whenever he could afford the parts. It was the dream he'd told Maya about, the maybe someday that felt more possible when she was around to believe in it. Ryan worked until his hands were filthy and his back ached, until the physical exhaustion might be enough to let him sleep. And when he finally headed inside at 3 in the morning, his phone was dark and silent, Maya's apology hanging in the digital ether unanswered. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Some distances were too far to cross. Some choices, once made, couldn't be unmade. Ryan had learned that lesson before. He just hadn't expected to have to learn it again. But life, as it always did, continued. February arrived with its brief false promises of spring, then March with its rain and renewal. Emma turned 7 with a small party in their backyard. Just a few kids from school, cake from the grocery store, the kind of simple celebration that was all Ryan could manage. His daughter blew out her candles and made a wish she wouldn't tell him, and Ryan wondered if she was wishing for the same thing he was. The shop stayed busy, bills got paid. Emma's drawing slowly started including other subjects besides the dark-haired girl who'd left. Ryan even went on a date, just one, set up by his boss's wife who was worried about him, a perfectly nice woman named Jennifer who taught 3rd grade and liked hiking and didn't understand why Ryan kept checking his phone like he was waiting for a message that would never come. He didn't call her again, and she didn't call him. Some doors, once closed, needed to stay that way. Spring moved towards summer. Emma finished 1st grade. Ryan got a small promotion at the shop. Not much, but enough that he could start saving again, putting money toward the dream of his own place someday. The Chevy truck in the garage was nearly finished, all its broken parts made whole again through patience and persistence and the kind of stubborn hope that refused to die no matter how hard reality tried to kill it. He was learning to live with the absence, the way you learn to live with any loss, by getting up every morning and putting one foot in front of the other and trusting that eventually the weight would get lighter. It hadn't yet. But he kept walking anyway, for Emma, if not for himself. And then, on a humid evening in early May, when the Portland sky was finally more blue than gray and Emma was playing in the sprinkler in their small backyard, Ryan's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail, stay safe in his carefully rebuilt routine. But something, instinct or foolishness, or that part of him that still believed in possibilities, made him swipe to accept. "Hello?" There was a pause just long enough that Ryan thought it might be a robocall. Then a voice he'd tried so hard to forget said, "Ryan? It's me. It's Maya." And just like that, the world tilted again. Ryan's hand tightened around the phone, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't process the reality of hearing her voice again after 4 months of silence. Emma's laughter drifted through the open window, and he stepped further into the house, away from the sound, needing space for whatever this conversation was about to become. Maya, he managed finally, and her name tasted like something half-remembered, painful and sweet at the same time. I know I have no right to call. Her words came fast, nervous, like she was afraid he'd hang up before she could get them out. I know what my father said to you, and I know I should have reached out sooner, should have fought harder, should have... She stopped, and Ryan heard her take a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for disappearing like that. Ryan leaned against the kitchen counter, his free hand gripping the edge hard enough to hurt. What happened that night, after they took you? They drove me back to campus and told me if I contacted you again, they'd cut me off completely. No more tuition, no more money, nothing. My father said he'd make sure I couldn't finish my degree, that I'd have wasted 3.5 years for nothing. Maya's voice cracked. And I believed him. I was so scared of losing everything I'd worked for that I folded, like I always do. You were protecting yourself, Ryan said, even though the words felt like glass in his mouth. I get it. Do you? Because I don't think I do anymore. There was something different in her voice now, something harder and more certain than the girl who'd let herself be led away that night. I spent the last 4 months doing exactly what they wanted. I went to class, focused on my grades, stopped making art that mattered, and started making art that was safe. I applied to jobs at my father's firm, smiled at family dinners, pretended I was fine with the life they'd planned for me. And you know what I realized? Ryan waited, afraid to breathe, afraid to hope. I realized that being safe isn't the same as being alive, that I was so busy protecting my future that I was destroying my present, that I gave up the only thing that ever made me feel real because I was too afraid to disappoint people who don't even see me. Maya's voice steadied. I graduated yesterday, and the first thing I did, the very first thing after I walked across that stage, was get in my car and drive to your shop. You came to the shop? Your boss said you'd left for the day. He looked at me like he knew exactly who I was and wasn't sure whether to tell me where to find you or call security. A ghost of a laugh. I didn't know if you'd moved, if you'd want to hear from me, if I'd burned everything so completely that there was nothing left to salvage. But I had to try. I had to at least tell you that I was wrong, that I'm sorry, that not a single day has gone by when I haven't thought about you and Emma and that house that felt more like home than anywhere I've ever lived. Ryan closed his eyes, emotion threatening to choke him. Maya, Wait, please. Let me finish. She was crying now. He could hear it. I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect you to forgive me or take me back or even want to see me. I just needed you to know that what we had was real, that it mattered, that you and Emma changed my life in ways I'm still figuring out how to articulate, and that I'm done living according to someone else's definition of success. I'm done choosing safe over honest. Where are you right now? Ryan asked quietly. In my car. Parked about 3 blocks from your house because I'm too scared to actually knock on your door. Ryan felt something break open in his chest, grief and anger, and a hope so fierce it terrified him. Are you still on Maple Street? How did you... Yes, I'm at the corner by the big oak tree. Stay there, Ryan said. I'm coming to you. He hung up before she could respond, called to Emma that he'd be right back, and walked out the front door without letting himself think about what he was doing. If he thought about it, he'd talk himself out of it. He'd remember all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the ways she'd hurt him, all the promises she'd broken without ever actually making them. But his feet kept moving anyway, carrying him down the sidewalk toward the corner where an old Honda sat with its engine running. He could see her silhouette through the windshield, her hands on the steering wheel, her head bowed like she was praying or gathering courage or both. Ryan stopped a few feet from the driver's side door and waited. After a moment, Maya looked up, and even through the glass and the fading evening light, he could see her eyes were red and swollen. She turned off the engine and got out slowly, like she was afraid any sudden movement might make him disappear. They stood there on the sidewalk, 5 feet and 4 months between them, and Ryan let himself really look at her. She was thinner than he remembered, her face drawn with exhaustion and something that looked like hard-won clarity. She'd cut her hair shorter, and she was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of the artist's uniform of paint-splattered everything. She looked older, sadder, real in a way she hadn't been before, like suffering had stripped away the last of her pretense. "Hi," Maya said softly, her hands twisting together in front of her. "Hi," Ryan replied, and his voice came out rougher than he'd intended. "I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Emma. And I know sorry isn't enough. Will never be enough. But I am so—" Her voice broke. "I am so sorry, Ryan, for all of it. For being too weak to fight for us. For letting them take me away. For disappearing like what we had meant nothing when it meant everything." Ryan felt 4 months of hurt and loneliness and anger rise up in his throat, demanding to be voiced. "Do you have any idea what it was like? Watching them drive you away and not being able to do anything about it? Trying to explain to Emma why you weren't coming back? Wondering every single day if you were okay, if you were thinking about us, if you regretted—" He stopped, dragged a hand through his hair. "I thought I'd learned my lesson about getting attached, about letting people in. And then you showed up and you made me believe again, and then you left, and I—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I know," Maya whispered. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But Ryan, I'm here now. I'm choosing you now. I know it's late. I know I should have been braver 4 months ago, but I'm trying to be brave now." "What changed?" Ryan asked, and he needed the answer more than air. "Why now? Why not in February or March or any of the dozens of days when Emma asked where you were and I had to lie to her?" Maya flinched like he'd slapped her, but she didn't look away. "Because I was still scared, still trapped in this idea that I needed my parents' approval to exist, that I couldn't survive without their money and their support and their version of success. But graduation did something to me. I walked across that stage and I looked out at the audience and my parents were there, smiling like they'd won, like they'd successfully molded me into the daughter they wanted. And I realized they didn't win. They broke something. They took the person I was becoming and they crushed her back into the box they'd built. And I let them. I chose fear over love. And I've been paying for that choice every single day since." "And now," Ryan's voice was barely above a whisper, "now I'm done paying. Done. I told my parents yesterday that I'm not taking the job at my father's firm, that I'm moving out of their house, cutting off their money, and figuring out my own path, even if it means student loans and struggle and all the uncertainty they've spent 21 years protecting me from." She took a step closer. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know you have every right to tell me to leave and never come back, but I had to try. Had to tell you that I choose you, Ryan, you and Emma and that imperfect house and the life we could build together if you'll let me. Not because it's easy or safe, but because it's real. Because you see me in ways no one else ever has. Because I would rather struggle with you than succeed with anyone else." Ryan stood there, letting her words wash over him, feeling the walls he'd built start to crack. He wanted to believe her, wanted to pull her into his arms and pretend the last 4 months hadn't happened, that they could just pick up where they'd left off. But he had Emma to think about now, had to be sure this time, had to know that Maya wouldn't run again the next time things got hard. "I need to know you're serious," he said finally, "that this isn't just graduation emotions or rebellion against your parents or some temporary crisis that'll fade once reality sets in. Because Emma got attached to you, Maya. She drew pictures of you for months. She asked me every single night when you were coming back, and I had to watch her face fall every time I said I didn't know. And I won't put her through that again unless I'm sure you're staying." "I'm sure," Maya said, and there was no hesitation in her voice. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I know I have to earn your trust back. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm not running anymore, Ryan. I'm done running. What about money? Your parents, if they really cut you off—" "I have a job," Maya interrupted. "Nothing glamorous. I'm going to be teaching art classes at the community center and waitressing on weekends. It's not what my father envisioned for me, but it's mine. And I have a friend from school whose roommate just moved out, so I have a place to stay until I can afford my own apartment. I'm not asking you to take care of me or fix my life. I'm just asking for a chance to be part of yours again." Ryan looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth in her eyes, saw the fear and the hope and the desperate courage it had taken to drive here, to risk this rejection, to choose uncertainty over comfort. And he thought about the last 4 months, about the hollow ache of missing her, about Emma's sad drawings and his own sleepless nights. Thought about how his house had felt empty, even though nothing had changed except her absence. "Emma's in the backyard," he said quietly, "playing in the sprinkler. She doesn't know you're here." Maya's face crumpled with hope and terror. Can I see her?" "I need to talk to her first, prepare her. She's been through enough already." Ryan paused, choosing his words carefully. "Come back in an hour. If she wants to see you, we'll figure out the rest from there. But Maya, if you do this, if you walk back into her life, you have to be all in, not just for now, not just until it gets hard again, but for real. She can't lose you twice." "I won't let her," Maya promised. "I won't let either of you. Not again." Ryan nodded and turned to walk back to his house, but Maya's voice stopped him. "Ryan?" He looked back. "Thank you," she said simply, "for not slamming the door in my face, for giving me a chance to explain, for everything." Ryan didn't trust himself to speak, so he just nodded again and continued walking, his heart pounding, his mind racing with all the ways this could go wrong and the small, stubborn part of him that still believed it might go right. He found Emma in the backyard, soaking wet and delighted, chasing the sprinkler in circles. When she saw him, she ran over, dripping and breathless. "Daddy, did you see? I can jump through the water without getting scared." "I saw, baby. You're very brave." Ryan crouched down to her level, suddenly unsure how to begin this conversation. "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" Emma's face grew serious, the way it always did when she sensed something important was coming. "Okay." They sat together on the back steps, Emma wrapped in a towel, and Ryan struggled to find the right words. How did you explain to a 7-year-old that the person she'd loved and lost might be coming back? How did you prepare her for the possibility of heartbreak again? "Do you remember Maya?" he asked finally. Emma's whole body went still. "The girl who went away?" "Yeah, that one." Ryan took a breath. "She called me today. She wants to see you again." Emma stared at him, her eyes huge and disbelieving. "Really?" "Really. She's been gone for a while because she had some grown-up things she needed to figure out. But she says she's ready to come back now if you want her to." "Why did she leave?" Emma's voice was small, and Ryan heard all the hurt she'd been carrying compressed into those 4 words. "Because she was scared," Ryan said honestly. "Sometimes people get scared and they make mistakes. She made a big mistake leaving the way she did, and she knows that. She wants to tell you she's sorry and see if maybe you can forgive her." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers playing with the edge of the towel. "Did she forget about us?" "No, sweetheart. She never forgot about us. She thought about us every day." "Then why didn't she come back sooner?" It was the same question Ryan had asked, and he gave Emma the same answer Maya had given him. Because sometimes being brave takes time to learn, and Maya's learning now. Emma looked up at him with those eyes that were too wise for 7 years. "Do you want her to come back?" Ryan felt his chest tighten. "I think so. But it doesn't matter what I want. What matters is what you want. This is your choice too." Emma thought about it, her face serious with concentration. Then she nodded slowly. "I want to see her, but Daddy, if she leaves again, I'm going to be really sad." "I know, baby." Ryan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her damp hair. "Me too. That's why we're going to be careful this time. We're going to make sure she's really staying before we let ourselves believe it completely." "Okay," Emma said. And then, with the resilience of childhood, "Can I wear my purple dress? The one with the unicorns?" Ryan laughed despite himself. "Sure, kiddo. Let's get you cleaned up." The next hour passed in a blur of nervous preparation. Emma insisted on combing her hair 3 times and changed her mind twice about whether to bring Mr. Bumbles. Ryan straightened the house even though it was already clean, made coffee even though his hands were shaking too much to drink it, checked the clock every 30 seconds like it might speed time up or slow it down through sheer force of will. When the knock finally came, soft and hesitant, Emma looked at Ryan with sudden terror. "What if she's different?" "Then we'll figure it out," Ryan said, taking her hand. "Together." He He opened the door, and there was Maya, holding a small plant in a ceramic pot. Something green and growing, a peace offering or a promise, or both. She looked at Emma, and her face transformed, tears spilling over before she could stop them. "Hi, Emma," she said softly. Emma stood frozen for a moment, caught between wanting to run forward and wanting to protect herself from being hurt again. Then, with a decision that seemed to surprise even her, she let go of Ryan's hand and walked slowly toward Maya. "You came back," Emma said, and it wasn't quite a question. "I came back," Maya confirmed, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "And I am so sorry for leaving. I made a really big mistake, and I hurt you, and I understand if you're mad at me." Emma studied her face with that unnerving directness children have. "My daddy says you were scared." I was. I was really scared. But being scared isn't an excuse for hurting people you love. "Do you still love us?" Emma asked, and the question hung in the air like something fragile and vital. "Yes," Maya said without hesitation. "I never stopped. Not for a single second." Emma nodded slowly, processing this. Then she said, "I made you something. Wait here." She ran back into the house, leaving Ryan and Maya alone on the porch. Maya stood, cradling the plant, and looked at Ryan with eyes that held everything she couldn't say. "She's grown," Maya whispered. "Even in 4 months. She's taller." "Yeah," Ryan said roughly. "Kids do that." Emma returned carrying a piece of paper carefully folded. She handed it to Maya with ceremony. "I made this a long time ago. I was going to give it to you when you came back." Maya unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, the colors bright and hopeful. Across the top, in Emma's careful first-grade printing, "Our family." Maya pressed the drawing to her chest like it was the most precious thing she'd ever received. And when she looked at Emma again, she was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Can I hug you?" she managed. Emma nodded, and Maya pulled her close, and Ryan watched them cling to each other on his front porch and felt something break and heal in his chest simultaneously. He wanted to protect them both from more pain, wanted to believe this time would be different, wanted to trust that Maya's choice was permanent, but all he could do was stand there and hope, and sometimes hoping was the bravest thing you could do. "Come inside," he said finally. "We should talk." They settled in the living room, Emma pressed against Maya's side like she was afraid to let her go. And for the next 2 hours, they talked about everything. Maya told them about her last semester, about the fight with her parents, about the slow, painful process of realizing she'd betrayed herself and the people she loved. Emma told Maya about school, about her new teacher, about the chapter book she was reading where a girl went on adventures with a dragon. Ryan mostly listened, watching the way they interacted, looking for signs of damage or distance or anything that suggested this reconciliation was premature. But what he saw instead was healing. Emma's laughter came easier as the evening wore on. Maya's shoulders gradually relaxed. The conversation flowed naturally, picking up threads from 4 months ago and weaving them into something that acknowledged the break but didn't dwell on it. And when Emma's eyes started to droop, still pressed against Maya's side, Ryan felt something cautiously optimistic take root. "I should go," Maya said softly, looking down at Emma, who was fighting sleep with everything she had. "Let you get her to bed." "No!" Emma jerked awake. "You can't leave. What if you don't come back again?" "Emma," Ryan started, but Maya cut him off. "I will come back," she promised, cupping Emma's face gently. "Tomorrow, if your dad says it's okay. And the day after that. And the day after that. I'm not disappearing again, sweetheart. You're stuck with me now." "Promise?" Emma's voice was tiny, vulnerable. "Promise." Emma looked at Ryan. "Can she come for breakfast? Please?" Ryan met Maya's eyes over his daughter's head. There was a question there, a request for permission to keep showing up, to prove through action what words couldn't convey. He knew he should be more cautious, should make her work harder to earn back what she'd lost. But he was tired of protecting himself, tired of living small and safe and alone. "Breakfast sounds good," he said. 8 o'clock? Maya's smile was like sunrise. "I'll be here." She stood to leave, and Emma hugged her one more time, fierce and tight. Then Ryan walked Maya to the door while Emma ran to get ready for bed. And in the privacy of the entryway, Maya touched his arm lightly. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me try again. I know I don't deserve—" "Maybe it's not about deserving," Ryan interrupted. "Maybe it's about choosing. You chose us today. Let's see if you keep choosing us tomorrow." "I will," Maya said fiercely. "Every day, for as long as you'll let me." She left with Emma's drawing clutched carefully in her hand, and Ryan stood in his doorway watching her taillights disappear into the gathering dark. Behind him, he could hear Emma singing in the bathroom, the sound bright and joyful in a way it hadn't been for months. And for the first time since that terrible night in November, Ryan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be put back together after all. The question was whether they'd be stronger in the broken places, or whether the cracks would always remain, waiting for the next pressure to make them shatter completely. He wouldn't know until he tried. And trying, he was learning, was sometimes the same thing as hoping. And hoping, despite everything, still felt like the bravest thing he knew how to do. Maya showed up the next morning at 7:45, 15 minutes early, carrying a paper bag from the bakery downtown and looking like she hadn't slept. Ryan opened the door in his work clothes, coffee already brewed, Emma still in her pajamas watching cartoons on the couch, and for a moment they just stood there looking at each other in the morning light. "I brought cinnamon rolls," Maya said, holding up the bag like evidence of good intentions. "I remembered Emma liked them." "She does," Ryan said, stepping back to let her in. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. I wanted to." Emma came running before they could say anything else, launching herself at Maya with the uncomplicated joy of a child who'd decided to forgive. Maya caught her, swinging her around, and Ryan watched them and felt the first real stirring of something that might eventually become trust again. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, Emma chattering about her dreams and the cartoon she'd been watching, Maya listening with the kind of focused attention that made people feel seen. Ryan mostly stayed quiet, drinking his coffee, observing the dynamic, looking for fault lines or false notes. But what he saw instead was genuine. Maya asking questions and meaning them. Emma responding with growing confidence. The rhythm they'd had before, tentatively rebuilding itself. After breakfast, Ryan had to leave for work. A full day at the shop, unavoidable. He stood in the doorway with his keys in his hand, torn between responsibility and the instinct to stay and supervise, to make sure Maya didn't disappear the moment he turned his back. "I can stay with her," Maya offered quietly, reading his hesitation. "If you're comfortable with that. I don't have to be at the community center until this afternoon." Ryan looked at Emma, who was already pulling Maya toward her room to show her the new book she'd gotten from the library. His daughter was practically vibrating with happiness, and he knew what the answer should be. Knew that trust had to start somewhere, that at some point he had to choose to believe Maya's promises instead of protecting against her potential betrayal. "Okay," he said, the word feeling like a leap. "But Emma has a playdate at noon with her friend Sophie. Sophie's mom will pick her up." "I'll make sure she's ready," Maya promised. Ryan nodded and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. "Maya?" She looked up from where Emma was tugging on her hand. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," she said simply, and there was such quiet certainty in her voice that Ryan almost believed her. Work was impossible. Ryan went through the motions, changing oil and rotating tires and replacing brake pads, but his mind was 3 miles away in his small house, where his daughter was rebuilding trust with a girl who'd broken it. He checked his phone obsessively. No missed calls, no emergency texts, nothing to suggest disaster, but the anxiety wouldn't settle. He'd been burned before. Learned the hard way that the people you loved could leave without warning, and pattern recognition was a survival skill that didn't just switch off because you wanted it to. But at noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophie's mom. "Got Emma. She seems really happy today. Everything good?" Ryan typed back a simple, "Yeah. Thanks," and felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Maya had followed through. Small thing, maybe, but it mattered. The day dragged on. Ryan finished his last job at 5:30, cleaned up, and drove home expecting to find the house empty, Emma still at Sophie's until the scheduled 6 o'clock pickup. Instead, he found Maya's car in his driveway and lights on in his kitchen. He walked in to find her at the stove, stirring something that smelled like actual home cooking, and the sight stopped him in the doorway. She'd made herself at home in his space again, knew where the pots were, and how he liked things organized, and it felt both comforting and terrifying. "You're back," Maya said, looking up with a tentative smile. "I hope you don't mind. I thought I'd make dinner. Emma will be home soon, and I figured—" She stopped, suddenly uncertain. "I'm sorry, I should have asked. I can go if this is too much too fast." "No," Ryan said, setting down his keys. It's good. What are you making?" "Just pasta. Nothing fancy. I'm not exactly a chef." She turned back to the stove, and Ryan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was trying so hard to do everything right that she'd forgotten how to be natural. He moved to stand beside her, close enough to see what she was cooking, far enough to maintain the careful distance they hadn't quite figured out how to bridge yet. "How was Emma this morning?" "Happy," Maya said softly. "We played games and read books, and she told me about everything I missed these last few months. Her favorite subject is art now. Did you know that? She said it's because I taught her that art is just paying attention to the world." Ryan felt his throat tighten. "She missed you. More than I think she knew how to say." "I missed her too. Missed both of you." Maya's voice dropped. "Every single day, Ryan. I know I was the one who stayed away, but it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared too much and didn't know how to be brave enough for it." "And now?" Ryan asked, watching her face in profile. "Are you brave enough now?" Maya met his eyes, and hers were clear and honest in a way they hadn't been last night. The exhaustion burned away to reveal something harder underneath. "I'm trying to be. That's all I can promise, that I'm trying." They stood there in his kitchen with the pasta boiling between them, and Ryan wanted to reach for her, wanted to close the distance and kiss her and pretend the last 4 months had been a bad dream. But he couldn't. Not yet. The hurt was still too fresh, the trust too fragile. Emma came home at 6, bursting through the door with Sophie's mom behind her, and the spell broke. Emma saw Maya and squealed, running to her like they'd been separated for days instead of hours. And Ryan watched them and thought about how easily his daughter forgave, how readily she opened herself up to being hurt again because the alternative was living closed off and afraid. Maybe he could learn something from that. Sophie's mom left after some pleasantries and knowing looks at Maya that Ryan chose to ignore, and they sat down to dinner. The three of them at the kitchen table again like no time had passed at all. Emma talked nonstop about her playdate, and Maya asked questions, and Ryan ate his pasta and tried to figure out how to navigate this new reality where everything was the same and nothing was. After dinner, Maya started to clean up, but Ryan stopped her. "I've got it. You should go. Long day tomorrow?" It wasn't really a dismissal, but it wasn't an invitation to stay either, and Maya heard the ambiguity in his tone. "Yeah, teaching my first class at 9. She turned to Emma. "Can I get another hug before I go?" Emma wrapped her arms around Maya's waist, holding tight. "You're coming back tomorrow, right? If it's okay with your dad." They both looked at Ryan, waiting, and he realized this was the pattern they'd fall into. Maya asking permission, Ryan granting it, both of them dancing around the real question of whether she was just visiting or actually coming home. "Yeah," he said. "You can come back." Maya's smile was grateful and sad at the same time. She kissed the top of Emma's head, nodded at Ryan, and left. And Ryan stood at the sink washing dishes while Emma hummed in the living room, and he wondered how long they could sustain this careful choreography before someone demanded more or walked away again. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was almost normal. Maya came over most days, either in the morning before her classes at the community center or in the evening after her waitressing shift. She never stayed the night, never pushed for more than Ryan seemed ready to give, but her presence became a constant again. Emma bloomed under the attention, her drawings filling with color, her laughter coming easier. And Ryan found himself watching Maya with a mixture of longing and wariness, wanting to believe in her staying power but unable to fully release the fear that she'd disappear again. They existed in a strange liminal space, more than friends, not quite partners, united by their love for Emma, but separated by everything unsaid between them. They didn't touch except accidentally, didn't talk about the future except in vague terms, didn't acknowledge the elephant in the room, which was that at some point they'd have to decide what this was and whether it was sustainable. Then one Saturday in late May, Maya showed up with dark circles under her eyes, and her hand shaking slightly as she set down the groceries she'd brought for breakfast. Emma was still asleep, and Ryan was making coffee, and when he turned to ask Maya what was wrong, he found her staring at him with something desperate in her expression. "I can't do this anymore," she said abruptly. Ryan's stomach dropped. "Can't do what?" "This. The careful distance, the pretending we're just friends co-parenting your daughter, the never talking about what happened or what we are or whether you're ever going to forgive me." Her voice cracked. "I know I hurt you. I know I have to earn back your trust. But Ryan, I don't know how to do that if you won't let me close enough to try. You've built this wall between us, and I understand why, but I'm suffocating behind it. I need to know if there's any chance you'll ever let me back in, or if I'm just going to be the girl who comes over to see Emma while you tolerate my presence because your daughter loves me." Ryan set down his coffee mug carefully, his hands suddenly unsteady. "What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. Do you still—" Maya stopped, forced herself to continue. "Do you still have feelings for me? Or did I kill that when I left?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and unavoidable. Ryan looked at her, at the exhaustion and hope and fear written across her face, and he felt 4 months of suppressed emotion rise up in his throat. "Of course I still have feelings for you," he said roughly. "That's not the problem. The problem is I don't know if I can survive you leaving again. The problem is Emma asking every night for months when you were coming back and me having to say I didn't know. The problem is I let you in once and you left, and now you're asking me to do it again, and I—" His voice broke. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for that." Maya crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and grabbed his hands, holding them tight. "Then tell me what you need. Tell me what I have to do to prove I'm staying, because I will do it, Ryan, whatever it takes. I will show up every single day until you believe me." "It's not about showing up," Ryan said, and he was surprised to feel tears burning behind his eyes. "It's about, I need to know that when things get hard, when your parents come back, or when the money runs out, or when you wake up one day and realize you're 21 years old playing house with a mechanic and his kid instead of living your life, I need to know you won't run, that you'll stay and fight instead of folding." "I will," Maya said fiercely. "I swear to you, I will. I'm not the same person who left in November. I've spent the last 6 months figuring out who I am without my parents' approval, without their money, without any safety net. And you know what I learned? I learned that the only thing I can't live without is this: you and Emma and the family we were building before I got too scared to see how precious it was." Ryan wanted to believe her, wanted to pull her close and kiss her and let down all his defenses. But the fear was still there, cold and insistent, reminding him of all the ways this could go wrong. "I need time," he said finally. "I know that's not fair to you, but I need more time to trust that this is real." Maya nodded, blinking back tears. "Okay, I can give you time. Just please don't shut me out completely while you're taking it." "I'm not shutting you out. I'm protecting myself and Emma." "I know, and I understand, but Ryan," she squeezed his hands, "while you're protecting yourself, don't forget to leave room for the possibility that this could work, that I could be who you need me to be, because I'm already that person. I've already chosen you. I just need you to choose me back." Before Ryan could respond, Emma's voice came from the hallway. "Maya, are you staying for breakfast?" They pulled apart quickly, and Maya wiped her eyes before turning with a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying." But as she moved to greet Emma, Ryan saw her shoulders hitch slightly, saw the effort it took to push down her emotion and be present for his daughter. And he realized with sudden clarity that Maya was hurting too, that she'd made mistakes but was doing everything she could to fix them, that she was showing up every day, trying to prove herself, living in this uncertain space because she believed they were worth the wait. Maybe it was time he started believing it too. That afternoon, after Maya left for her waitressing shift and Emma was occupied with a craft project, Ryan called his sister in Seattle. Michelle was 5 years older, had 2 kids of her own, and had been the one to hold him together when Sarah left. She was also the only person besides Emma who knew about Maya. "So she came back," Michelle said after Ryan explained the situation. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, 3 weeks ago." She's been coming over almost every day. And how do you feel about that? Ryan leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the wall where one of Maya's paintings still hung, something she'd made for Emma back in December, a watercolor of a garden in impossible colors. I don't know, scared mostly. She says she's changed, that she won't leave again, but how am I supposed to know that? You're not, Michelle said bluntly. That's the thing about trust, Ryan. You can't know. You can only choose to believe or choose to protect yourself. And neither choice is wrong, but they lead to very different places. What if I choose wrong? Then you deal with it. But what if you choose right? What if she really has changed and you miss out on something real because you're too scared to try again? Ryan closed his eyes. Emma's already attached to her again. If Maya leaves, it's not just me who gets hurt. Emma's 7. She's resilient. And honestly, watching you model healthy relationships and appropriate risk-taking is probably better for her than watching you live scared and closed off. Michelle paused. Look, I'm not saying jump in with both feet. I'm just saying maybe stop standing on the edge waiting for someone to push you. Make a choice. Either tell her it's not going to work and let her go, or commit to trying for real. This half-in, half-out thing isn't fair to anyone. She was right. Ryan knew she was right. But knowing and doing were different things, and the gap between them felt impossibly wide. He spent the next few days thinking about what Michelle had said, watching Maya with Emma, seeing how she'd integrated herself back into their lives with patience and consistency. She never asked for more than he offered, never pushed, just showed up, day after day, being exactly who she'd promised to be. On Thursday evening, after Emma was in bed, Maya lingered in the doorway preparing to leave, and Ryan found himself saying, "Stay for a bit. I want to talk." They settled on the couch, their old spot, the place where most of their important conversations had happened, and Ryan took a breath and made himself say what he'd been thinking. "I've been unfair to you," he started, "keeping you at arm's length but not letting you go, making you prove yourself over and over without giving you any indication that it's working. Ryan, let me finish." He turned to face her. "You hurt me when you left. Really hurt me, and I've been holding on to that hurt as protection, as a reason to not take the risk again. But Michelle, my sister, she pointed out that I'm not actually protecting anyone. I'm just punishing us both for a mistake you've already apologized for and are actively working to fix." Maya was very still, barely breathing. "I'm not saying I'm all the way there yet," Ryan continued. "I'm not saying the fear is gone or that I fully trust this won't fall apart. But I'm saying..." He reached for her hand, tentative. "I'm saying I want to try, really try. Not this halfway thing we've been doing, but actually being together and seeing where it goes." "You mean it?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, I mean it. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. I come with baggage and a kid and a life that's not glamorous. I work long hours at a job that barely pays enough. I live in a house that's falling apart. And I'm still learning how to trust again. It's not going to be easy." "I don't want easy," Maya said, and now she was crying, tears streaming down her face as she gripped his hand like a lifeline. "I want real. I want you and Emma and this messy, imperfect life you've built. That's all I've ever wanted." Ryan pulled her close, and she collapsed against him, and they held each other on that couch while Portland's perpetual rain started up outside. And for the first time in 6 months, Ryan let himself believe that maybe broken things could be made whole, that maybe second chances were real, that maybe choosing love over fear was worth the risk. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly, his lips against her hair. "Me too," Maya whispered back. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe with anyone else." They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, letting the weight of everything unsaid finally settle into something that felt like resolution. And when Maya finally pulled back to look at him, Ryan saw his own hope and fear reflected in her eyes. "Can I kiss you?" she asked softly. In answer, Ryan cupped her face and closed the distance between them. And the kiss was different than he remembered. Less desperate, more certain, a promise instead of a question. Maya kissed him back with something that felt like coming home, and Ryan thought about all the ways a person could be lost and found, broken and healed, afraid and brave. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya rested her forehead against his. I love you, she said. I should have said it before. Should have said it that night in November, before they took me away. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Ryan Cole. I love your daughter. I love this life you've built from scratch, and I'm not going anywhere. Ryan felt something crack open in his chest, that last piece of armor finally giving way. I love you too, he said, and meant it down to his bones. I never stopped, even when I wanted to. They kissed again, slower this time, and Ryan let himself sink into it, let himself believe in the possibility of happiness, let himself trust that this time, things might actually work out. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, washing the streets clean, making everything new. Maya stayed that night, not in Ryan's bed. They weren't ready for that yet, still navigating the careful reconstruction of trust. But on the couch, where they'd fallen asleep tangled together, talking until the early hours about everything they'd been too afraid to say. When Ryan woke at dawn, stiff and uncomfortable, Maya's head was on his shoulder and her hand was clasped in his, and for a moment he just lay there feeling the weight of her against him, solid and real and present. He must have moved because Maya stirred, blinking up at him in the gray morning light. Hi, she murmured, her voice rough with sleep. Hi, Ryan said back, and then they were kissing again, soft and unhurried, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Emma found them like that 20 minutes later, still on the couch, and her delighted shriek of "Maya stayed over" brought them both back to reality. Ryan pulled away, suddenly aware that his daughter was witnessing this shift, this new thing they were becoming, and he needed to make sure she understood what it meant. Come here, kiddo, he said, and Emma bounded over, climbing onto the couch between them. Maya and I need to talk to you about something. Emma looked between them, her expression serious. Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now? Maya laughed, surprised. How did you... You were kissing, Emma said matter-of-factly. That's what boyfriend and girlfriend do. Connor at school told me. Ryan exchanged a glance with Maya, and she nodded, giving him permission to navigate this conversation. Yeah, he said. Yeah, we are. Is that okay with you? Emma considered this with the gravity of a judge deliberating a verdict. Does that mean Maya's going to live here? Not right away, Maya said carefully. I have my own apartment right now, but I'll be here a lot if that's okay with you. Like every day? Probably most days. Emma nodded slowly, then turned to Ryan. Daddy, does this mean Maya's going to be my mom? The question hit Ryan like a physical blow. He looked at Maya and saw his own shock reflected in her eyes, mixed with something that might have been hope or terror, or both. Emma, sweetheart, Ryan started, trying to find words for something he hadn't even processed himself. Maya's not replacing your mom. Your mom is still your mom, even though she's not here. But Maya loves you very much, and she wants to be part of our family. But I don't remember my mom, Emma said quietly, and there was something achingly honest in her voice. I know what she looks like from pictures, but I don't remember her. And Maya reads me stories and helps me with art and makes me feel safe. Isn't that what moms do? Ryan felt his throat close up. He'd spent years trying to fill both roles for Emma, being mother and father and everything in between, and he thought he was doing okay. But hearing his daughter articulate what she'd been missing, what Maya had given her without either of them quite realizing it, it undid him completely. Yeah, baby, he managed. That's what moms do. Then can Maya be my mom? Not instead of my real mom, but like an extra one? Maya was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she pulled Emma into her lap. I would be so honored, she whispered. So honored to be your mom, if your daddy says it's okay. Emma looked at Ryan expectantly, and he found himself nodding even though his brain was screaming that this was too fast, too much, too soon after everything that had happened. But his heart, his stupid, hopeful heart, was saying yes, this was exactly right. This was what they'd been building toward all along. Yeah, he said, his voice breaking. Yeah, that's okay with me. Okay. Emma beamed and threw her arms around both of them, and they sat there in a three-way embrace while the morning light grew stronger and the coffee Ryan had started brewing earlier began to beep insistently in the kitchen. And Ryan thought about how families weren't always made the traditional way, how sometimes they came together through accident and choice, and the brave decision to love despite every reason not to. The next few weeks transformed from cautious rebuilding into something that looked remarkably like a life. Maya started staying over more often, first just on weekends, then a few nights during the week. Her things began to accumulate in Ryan's house. A toothbrush in the bathroom, clothes in the closet, art supplies taking over the corner of the living room. Emma started calling her Maya Mom in a hyphenated construction that made both adults tear up the first time they heard it, but it wasn't all smooth. There were hard conversations about money. Maya's 2 jobs barely covered her rent and student loan payments, and she hated that she couldn't contribute more to the household. There were awkward moments when Ryan's protective instincts clashed with Maya's desire to be involved in parenting decisions. There were nights when the fear would hit Ryan out of nowhere, and he'd wake in a cold sweat, convinced he'd find Maya's side of the bed empty, that she'd finally realized what she'd gotten herself into and left. But she was always there, every morning, every night, every moment when doubt tried to creep back in. She was there. The real test came on a sweltering afternoon in July when a Mercedes pulled up in front of Ryan's house and Marcus Bennett got out. Ryan was in the garage working on the Chevy truck when he heard the car door slam, and he walked out to find Maya's father standing on the sidewalk, his expression cold and appraising. "Mr. Bennett?" Ryan said evenly, wiping grease from his hands. "This is a surprise." "I'm sure it is." Marcus's tone was clipped. "Is my daughter here?" "She's inside with Emma." Ryan moved to block the path to the house, his body language protective. "Does Maya know you're coming?" "I don't need permission to see my own daughter." "Actually, you kind of do. She's an adult, and this is my property." They stared at each other, 2 men separated by class and experience, but united in their connection to the same woman. Finally, Marcus said, "I came to talk to her, to apologize." That stopped Ryan cold. "What?" "You heard me." Marcus looked uncomfortable, like the words were being physically pulled from him. "My wife has been persistent in her belief that I handled the situation poorly. And after watching Maya struggle these last few months, after seeing her give up everything we'd planned for her," he stopped, his jaw clenching. "I may have made a mistake." Before Ryan could respond, the front door opened and Maya stepped out, her face pale. She must have seen the car from the window. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you." Marcus's voice softened slightly. Can I come inside?" Maya looked at Ryan, a question in her eyes. He nodded. Whatever this was, she needed to face it, and he'd be right there beside her. They settled in the living room, the 4 of them. Marcus perched uncomfortably on the couch, Maya and Ryan standing close together, Emma peeking around the corner until Ryan gestured for her to go play in her room. The tension was thick enough to cut. "Your mother and I have been talking," Marcus started, his hands folded in his lap. "About how we handled things in November, about the ultimatum we gave you." "You mean the part where you dragged me away and threatened Ryan and cut me off?" Maya's voice was steady but hard. "That ultimatum?" "Yes, that one." Marcus had the decency to look ashamed. "I thought I was protecting you. Thought you were making a mistake that would derail your entire future. But Catherine pointed out that in trying to protect you from one kind of mistake, I pushed you into making others, that I taught you to choose security over happiness, money over love. And that's—" He stopped, struggling. "That's not the lesson I wanted to teach." Maya was very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm sorry for how I treated you, for how I treated—" Marcus glanced at Ryan. "For how I treated your relationship. I still don't understand it. Still don't see how this—" He gestured vaguely at the worn living room, the house that was held together more by determination than anything else. "How this is what you want when you could have so much more. But your mother reminded me that it's not my job to understand your choices. It's my job to support them." Ryan felt Maya's hand find his, gripping tight. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "You made me feel like I had to choose between my family and the people I love. Like I couldn't have both. I know. And I can't undo that. But I can try to do better going forward." Marcus stood, reaching into his pocket and pulling out an envelope. This is a check for your student loans. Consider it a graduation gift, not a bribe. You don't owe me anything for it. I don't want you drowning in debt because I was too stubborn to see that you'd already found what matters." Maya took the envelope with shaking hands, opened it, and gasped. "Dad, this is all of them, the entire balance. Like I said, a gift." Marcus looked at Ryan directly for the first time. "I judged you without knowing you. Assumed you were taking advantage of my daughter when really you were just being kind, being decent, being there when she needed someone. I apologize for that." Ryan nodded, not quite ready to accept the apology, but recognizing the courage it took to offer it. "Maya's the one you need to make things right with, not me." "I know." Marcus turned back to his daughter. "I can't promise I'll always understand your choices. Can't promise I won't worry about you or wish you'd chosen an easier path, but I can promise to try to support you, even when I don't agree. That's what your mother and I should have done from the beginning." Maya was crying now, the envelope clutched to her chest. "I thought you'd disowned me, thought I'd lost you forever." "You're my daughter," Marcus said, and his own voice was rough. "I could never—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "Your mother wants to see you, to meet Emma properly, to apologize in person. Would that be all right?" Maya looked at Ryan again, seeking his opinion, his permission, his reassurance that this wasn't a trap. He squeezed her hand. "It's up to you." "Okay," Maya said softly. "Okay. She can come. But Dad, I need you to understand something. I'm not coming back to your world. This is my life now, Ryan and Emma, and this house, and teaching art to kids who can't afford fancy private lessons. This is where I belong." "I'm beginning to see that," Marcus said. He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, you seem happy. Happier than I've seen you in years. That should have been my first clue that I was wrong." He left without another word, and Maya collapsed onto the couch, the envelope falling from her hands as she put her face in her palms and sobbed. Ryan sat beside her, pulling her close, and let her cry out 4 months of pain and fear and the sudden overwhelming relief of reconciliation. "He came back," Maya said between sobs. I thought I'd lost them forever and he came back." "People do that sometimes," Ryan said gently, "when they love you enough to admit they were wrong." "Like I did," Maya whispered. "Yeah, like you did." They sat there for a long time, holding each other while Maya processed what had just happened. Eventually, Emma crept back into the room and climbed onto the couch between them, not saying anything, just being present in the way children could be when they sensed adults needed comfort. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Maya and Ryan sat on the back porch watching the sunset paint Portland's sky in shades of amber and rose. The check from Marcus sat on the coffee table inside, temporarily forgotten in the weight of everything else. "My mom called," Maya said quietly, "while you were giving Emma her bath. She's coming next weekend, wants to take us all to dinner, you, me, Emma, a proper meeting." "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, hopeful, both." Maya leaned her head on Ryan's shoulder. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, for this to be too good to be true." "Me too," Ryan admitted. "Every single day." "But it hasn't. Gone wrong, I mean. We keep expecting disaster and getting this." She gestured at the house, the yard, the life they'd built. "How long until we stop waiting for it to fall apart?" "I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe that's just what love is, choosing to build something beautiful while knowing it could break." Ryan tilted her face up to look at him. "But I'd rather risk it breaking than never build it at all." Maya kissed him, soft and certain, and Ryan thought about how much had changed since that rainy November night when a stranger knocked on his door. How one act of kindness had spiraled into this, into love and family and second chances and the slow, brave work of building trust from broken pieces. The dinner with Catherine Bennett went better than anyone expected. She was warmer than her husband, more willing to bend, and she fell in love with Emma within the first 5 minutes of meeting her. Watching his daughter charm Maya's mother with stories about her art projects and Mr. Bumbles, Ryan felt something he hadn't dared to feel before. The sense that maybe, just maybe, This was actually going to work. Summer faded into fall. Maya officially moved in at the end of August, giving up her apartment to save money, and because she was spending every night at Ryan's house anyway. They converted the spare room, the one that had been storage and broken dreams, into a proper art studio for Maya, a space where she could create and teach and be herself. Emma started second grade and told everyone who would listen that she had a Maya mom now, who was teaching her to paint like a real artist. The student loan check sat in Maya's bank account for a while before she finally decided what to do with it. She paid off the debt, like her father had intended, but she also used some of the remaining money to buy supplies for the community center, to fund scholarships for kids who couldn't afford art classes, to invest in the community that had given her purpose when she'd lost everything else. Ryan finished restoring the Chevy truck in October, and on a crisp Saturday morning, he drove it to the shop and showed his boss what he'd built from scraps and determination and the stubborn belief that broken things could be made whole. His boss offered him a partnership on the spot, a small share of the business, the chance to build something of his own. Ryan said yes, thinking about how dreams deferred weren't dreams denied, how patience and persistence could still pay off even when you'd stop believing they would. In November, exactly 1 year after Maya had first knocked on his door, Ryan got down on one knee in the living room while Emma watched with barely contained excitement. The ring was simple, all he could afford, but Maya looked at it like it was the most precious thing she'd ever seen. "I'm not promising you easy," Ryan said, his hands shaking slightly as he held the ring. "I'm not promising you money or comfort or any of the things your parents probably think you deserve. But I'm promising you this. I will show up every single day, no matter how hard it gets. I will choose you and choose us and choose this life we're building. Will you marry me?" Maya was crying again, but this time it was joy instead of pain, hope instead of fear. "Yes," she said, and then louder. "Yes, yes, yes." Emma squealed and launched herself at both of them, and they tumbled to the floor in a tangle of limbs and laughter. And Ryan thought about how love was sometimes a choice you made once, and sometimes a choice you made 1,000 times, day after day, moment by moment, in the face of every reason to protect yourself instead. They got married in March in a small ceremony in Ryan's backyard, with Emma as the flower girl, and both sets of parents in attendance. Marcus still looked vaguely uncomfortable with the whole situation, but he walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle with something that might have been pride. Catherine cried through the entire ceremony. Ryan's sister Michelle was the maid of honor, and she whispered to Ryan before the ceremony, "You made the right choice, letting yourself try again." "Yeah," Ryan said, watching Maya laugh with Emma as they practiced the flower girl walk one more time. "I really did." The reception was potluck, the music was someone's iPhone connected to a Bluetooth speaker, and the wedding cake was from the grocery store. But none of that mattered because everyone who mattered was there. Ryan danced with his daughter while Maya danced with her father, and then they switched and Ryan held his wife, while she cried happy tears into his shoulder. "I love you," she whispered. "Thank you for opening the door." "Thank you for knocking," Ryan whispered back. That night, after the guests had left and Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, Ryan and Maya stood together in their bedroom now, officially, and looked at the life they'd built from broken pieces and brave choices. "Are you happy?" Maya asked, wrapping her arms around his waist. Ryan thought about the question, thought about the last year and a half, about the pain and the healing, the fear and the courage, the endings and the beginnings. Thought about Emma sleeping down the hall with Mr. Bumbles, about the studio full of Maya's art, about the partnership papers sitting on his desk waiting to be signed, about the family they'd chosen to become. "Yeah," he said, pulling her closer. "Yeah, I'm happy." And he was. Not in the uncomplicated way of people who'd never been hurt, not in the naive way of people who believed love conquered all, without effort, but in the hard-won, deeply earned way of someone who'd survived loss and chosen to risk love anyway. In the way of someone who'd learned that broken things could be made beautiful, that second chances were real, that kindness to strangers could change your entire life. 3 years later, Ryan and Maya would welcome a son, a baby boy they'd name Marcus Ryan, after the grandfather who'd learned to apologize and the father who'd never stopped showing up. Emma would be 9 by then, Old enough to be a capable big sister, young enough to still believe in the kind of magic that turns strangers into family. But that was still to come. For now, on this March night, with the Portland rain starting up outside and the woman he loved in his arms, Ryan was content to simply be, to exist in this moment of hard-won happiness, to trust that tomorrow would come and they would face it together, whatever it brought. "Come to bed," Maya said, tugging him toward the mattress. "In a minute." Ryan moved to the window, looking out at his small yard, his modest house, his imperfect but precious life. And he thought about the night this had all started, when he'd opened a door to a cold, scared girl in the rain. When he'd chosen kindness over caution, hope over fear, connection over safety. Best decision he'd ever made. Maya appeared beside him, following his gaze. "What are you thinking about?" "How one choice can change everything. How opening a door can lead to—" He gestured at the house, at her, at the life they shared. "To this. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't opened the door that night? If you'd turned me away?" Ryan considered it. "Sometimes. But then I remember that I did open it, that we both made choices that led us here. And maybe that's the whole point. Not what could have happened, but what did." They stood there for a moment longer, watching the rain, before Maya pulled him toward the bed. And as they settled in together, Ryan's last thought before sleep was gratitude. For second chances. For brave choices. For families built by love instead of blood. For the girl who'd knocked on his door and the life they'd built from that single moment of kindness. He'd opened the door not knowing what it would cost him, or give him, or change in him. But he'd opened it anyway. And that choice, that one simple act of compassion on a cold November night, had given him everything he'd been too afraid to want. A family, a partner, a future. Home.